What started as a big dream with humble beginnings is now the world's premier racing series, built on the backs of larger-than-life talents, personalities that shaped our sport, heroes we still root for. And we honor them tonight at a place where young meets old, past races present, and time stands still. As we cherish our finest memories.
Photo finish.
Cinderella finally! Fifth consecutive championship.
Moments that live on.
Edwards goes up in the air.
NASCAR's newest Hall of Fame class. Men who rose to greatness now take their place alongside our sport's immortals. Not as spectators, but as equals. They are our innovators.
Wood Brothers crew noted for rapid-fire pit stop.
Heroes. Faces we'll remember forever. Creators of memories we'll never forget.
Oh, I won the Daytona 500! I won the Daytona 500!
But for all their accomplishments, tonight is their greatest moment as they are inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame.
Just let them shine.
Live from Charlotte, North Carolina, welcome to the 2012 NASCAR Hall of Fame Induction Ceremony. Please welcome your host from NASCAR on Fox and Speed, Mike Joy.
Good evening and welcome. I promise you an emotional evening, and it's already begun. We walked into the room for dinner, and Darrell comes up and he goes, "It's the Hall of Fame, it's the Hall of Fame." This is the Hall of Fame, isn't it? And I had to say, you bet it is. And Dale Inman gives you that handshake, and you feel like your hand has just been crushed in a vice. And Glenn and the Wood brothers are here. What wonderful gentlemen, and what a great record and a great legacy. Cale, tough as nails. I hear Cale and Bobby and Donnie and Buddy and Darrell talking, and I wanted to go collect all the rental car keys before a 30-lap feature broke out in the parking lot. And I thought I had it all together. And Gay and I walked in this room, walked up that bright aisle, and there's a fellow there with a camera, wearing his Richie Evans t-shirt. And I lost it. These are our friends, these are our heroes, and this is our Hall of Fame. Take a look at that wall and those banners. What a wonderful, wonderful group of 15 of the sport's pioneers and its greatest stars that we have honored here, and we've only just begun. So let's begin this evening by welcoming the members of the NASCAR Hall of Fame who have joined us tonight. From the inaugural class, winner of 50 races as a driver and 6 championships as an owner, the last American hero, Junior Johnson. The winner of 200 Cup races, 7-time champion of NASCAR, the sports king, Richard Petty. And here tonight from the class of 2011, a hero in World War II, one of NASCAR's pioneering car owners, a hero to race fans, Walter Bud Moore. NASCAR sportsman champion, 2-time champion of what's now the Sprint Cup Series, and a great broadcaster, Ned Jarrett. Leader of the Alabama gang, Daytona 500 winner and Sprint Cup champion, Bobby Allison. Winner of 105 Cup races and 3 national championships, the Silver Fox, David Pearson. And let's acknowledge tonight's inductees. The man behind the throne, the man who defined the role of crew chief and trained a whole nother generation of great winning crew chiefs. He too is racing royalty, Dale Inman. A Virginia gentleman who chased success on the racetrack and on pit road. As a winning driver and car owner to this day, Glenn Wood. Winner of 9 NASCAR Modified National Championships, an unbelievable standard. That defines the unforgettable career of Richie Evans, who is represented tonight by a great many members of the Evans family. Only 2 drivers have won the NASCAR Sprint Cup Championship 3 consecutive years. Also the winner of 4 Daytona 500s and 5 Southern 500s, Cale Yarborough. And another 3-time Sprint Cup champion. That just partially tells the tale of one of NASCAR's most visible and popular competitors of all time, Darrell Waltrip. Congratulations to all of you. Now let's go live to the Hall of Honor at the NASCAR Hall of Fame and my Fox Sports and Speed colleague, Chris Devoda.
Thanks, Mike. Here in the Hall of Honor, the legends of our sport are immortalized. I'm standing in front of the spire of one of our past inductees, Ned Jarrett. Each spire is 7 feet tall, handcrafted out of stainless steel, and features a laser-etched likeness of its namesake. An embedded video screen displays each inductee's career highlights. Soon, the class of 2012 spires, which you see on stage tonight, will join these inductee spires and live forever here in the Hall of Honor. Let's meet this year's inductees.
Cale Yarborough drove for the Wood Brothers for 5 years before moving to Junior Johnson and Associates, where he won an unprecedented 3 championships in a row.
Junior was dedicated, and I was dedicated to winning races and winning championships. It just worked out for us.
Cale won back-to-back Daytona 500s in 1983 and 1984, bringing his career total to 4. Before retiring in 1988, he had collected 83 wins in his 31-year NASCAR career. Darrell Waltrip found himself drawn to cars and speed. Racing his way through Kentucky and Tennessee, he began a career that drove him all the way to the NASCAR Hall of Fame.
Being in the right place at the right time. I've been available at the right time to do whatever opportunity's been presented to me. Getting out of the Dygaard contract and going to drive for Junior. Leaving Junior and going to Rick and winning the Daytona 500 and my own team in Western Auto, and can't imagine it could have worked out any other way.
Richard Petty ruled the Cup Series. Richie Evans was the king of NASCAR's modified division. The rapid Roman from Rome, New York won 9 titles, including 8 straight.
If you have to name one guy that has been instrumental in the modified series, I think 9 out of 10 people are gonna say Richie Evans.
In an unprecedented honor, Evans 61 became the first number in any NASCAR division to be retired. After a decorated racing career, Glenn Wood became a driving force behind one of the most powerful teams in NASCAR history. His passion for the sport has kept Wood Brothers Racing alive today.
Most of the family worked on the race cars with them, and I think that could have been led to part of their success.
I've had more success out of their cars than any that I ever drove. I was tickled to death just to get to drive it.
David Pearson wins it by about 3.5 or 4 feet.
In the history of NASCAR, no other crew chief has achieved the success that Dale Inman has. In just over 20 years, Inman won 193 races. Teamed with his cousin Richard Petty, The duo rewrote the NASCAR record books.
If I just sort of thought, hey, this car is a little bit loose, somehow or another Dale realized that, or he could see it or whatever.
That was the main goal, to make the race car better and what he wanted on the race car, and I think that was my strong asset.
Such class, and what a class we honor here tonight. If you've been with us for the past 2 years for this induction, you've heard wonderful speeches extolling the virtues of each of the inductees, and you will again tonight. But we've added a bit of a twist. We've recorded speeches from each of tonight's inductees' greatest, fiercest, and maybe maddest rivals. So I hope you have your seatbelts cinched up. It's going to be a great night.
Earlier this evening, NASCAR Chairman and CEO Brian France presented the class of 2012 with their NASCAR Hall of Fame jackets at the annual induction dinner. Coming up, Dale Inman becomes the evening's first inductee.
He was a master at communications.
Dale Inman just out-figured him a little bit.
He was the king of stock car racing's crew chief.
He worked on the car, he pitted the car, he took the car to the racetrack, he made the decisions of how to pit the car, and then he talked to the driver about what they needed to do to the car.
Speed's presentation of the NASCAR Hall of Fame induction ceremony is brought to you by Nationwide Insurance. Call 866-500-5555 or a local agent now. And by GoPro, the world's most versatile HD camera. Be a hero. GoPro.
I'm Leonard Wood, and it's a pleasure to kick off tonight's segment, honoring Dale Inman. Back in the day, when you could find both of us on pit road, we were great rivals and competitors as crew chiefs. He did his homework for sure. He was out to beat you any way he could, and as the record books show, he was one tough competitor. The bottom line for me, personally, he was my biggest competition, but he was also one of my best friends. Congratulations, Dale, on your induction into the NASCAR Hall of Fame.
Welcome back to Uptown, Charlotte, North Carolina, for the 2012 NASCAR Hall of Fame induction ceremony. Now we head back to the Crown Ballroom and Mike Joy.
En route to helping build a sport, tonight's first inductee also built a legacy there at the University of Level Cross. He turned pit road into his personal playground, guiding Richard Petty to glory. Tonight, Dale Inman and Richard are together again as members of the NASCAR Hall of Fame.
People forget where racing came from. It wasn't always about the drivers. He may have been the driving force behind the team. He may have been the guy footing the bill. He may have been the guy pushing to get the cars built and things like that. I'm talking way, way back. But he always had a buddy. He always had a guy that was with him through thick and thin, trying to help him build that car to make it go faster.
For a NASCAR driver, that buddy is called a crew chief. And for Dale Inman, NASCAR's first Hall of Fame crew chief, it's a title he just happened to gain thanks to NASCAR's king.
Me being involved in racing certainly wasn't planned. I think it's one of them things where it just happened, you know what I mean?
I think we're second cousins on my mother's side. We grew up together in the same community. He lived about a quarter mile down the road. He's really my second brother.
For Dale, spending time with his cousins Richard and Maurice also meant working with their father, NASCAR Hall of Famer Lee Petty.
Before me and Richard Maurice could play ball or go swimming or do our thing, we had to have Lee's race car ready. And the education we all got was certainly through Lee, you know what I mean? And he was a very strict professor, to say the least.
Working under the meticulous three-time champion, Inman learned the ins and outs of leading a winning race team. Perfect preparation for the future King's crew chief.
Dale's greatest strength as a crew chief was observation. Okay, he observed what everybody else was doing, especially during a race or even before a race. He knew where the competition was.
He'd come around, and talk to you and then try to find out what gear you're running. When he'd find out what you was running, then you say, well, what are you running? Well, he's gone,
The crew chief job then was more of a mechanic and going over the wall, changing tires. And Dale was probably one of the best tire changers in the business. Dale Inman was kind of like a legend or a hero to me.
I think Dale was a prototype for what we currently have as a crew chief. He's the kind of guy that could walk in a room from 50 feet away, could tell something was wrong with the race car, something was really right with the race car.
Really smart and talented about what he did. Had a great relationship with Richard Petty that you could see in his interviews when they would talk to him on pit road.
Looks like everything's all right, but I hear he's got a bad stomach. No, he's got a real bad head cold. It's got him. He took so much stuff forward. He's a little bit swimmy-headed, and he's not feeling real good.
Dale Inman and Richard had such a great relationship. That's how champions are built, is the longevity of a relationship. You knew when you were going up against that 43, you were going to have your hands full.
The Petty crew displayed typically cool pit work and strategy.
He was a strategist before there was such thing as strategy. I can't tell you how many races Richard Petty won, not because he was the fastest car, but because Dale Inman made the right call in the pits.
One of the fastest pit crews in the business, Dale Inman, the crew chief on this car, directing the traffic here as they go to work on the rods. They're not changing tires. A change of pace here for the Petty crew. They're only adding gasoline and he's away. A very quick pit stop. What strategy?
He's coming across the line slowly, but he takes the checkered flag.
Dale and them just out-figured him a little bit there.
People forget that Dale was with more than just Richard Petty. They don't understand that he won a championship with Terry Labonte.
He's the only crew chief that's won 8 championships so far. I mean, that's quite a feat in whatever sport you're in. And I'm really glad that he got the 8th one with me.
Everybody talks about Richard Petty winning 7 championships, Earnhardt won 7, but he's won 8. So that kind of sets him apart.
As crew chief and crew member, Inman has contributed to more than 200 wins. He's won more poles, Daytona 500s, championships, and races than any other crew chief in NASCAR history.
There's just so many people that's helped me fulfill this. Without people standing behind me and believing in me, and it wouldn't happen. It's just a lot of honors that's happened to me, and it's all of it's come through racing. We'll be proud of it as long as we last.
I want to be a crew chief. What have I got to do to be the top crew chief of all time? There's Dale Inman standing up there. 8 championships, 200 wins, or 190 wins, whatever. That's the record that I got to beat if I want to be the #1 guy.
To induct Dale Inman, please welcome to the stage Dale's cousin, his longtime driver, and his lifetime friend, 7-time NASCAR champion, Richard Petty.
Well, they just took my speech away from me there on that camera deal. I guess I just start out with telling you, we started out 75 years ago. Dale did. I'm not quite that old. And, again, it shows we're born in the country, with dirt roads, the whole deal. We grew up, didn't know what a race car was. Used to race our bicycles down to the creek and go swimming and stuff like that. But we was just plain old situation where we was a country and didn't know any better. And then my dad started racing. That kind of took us out all over the country. I don't guess me and Dale, either one, had been out of Randolph County till we went to a race somewhere in Wilkesboro or somewhere. And so anyhow, we just grew up together, grew up around it. Neither one of us was that mechanically inclined. We just sort of learned as we went. My dad taught us a lot. We learned a lot on our own. You know, and way back when, there wasn't no thing as a crew chief. You know, they had mechanics, you know, crew mechanics, whatever they wanted to call it. And Dale was basically the first one. He's the one that basically started the crew chief operation, because we used to, I guess in 1958 or something, my brother and Dale drove a 57 Oldsmobile to California, run the race and drove it back home. That was the pit crew, that was the whole deal. And that's the way it started. So we learned as we went. And, you know, over a period of time, we got lucky. We got a truck, we got a trailer, went big time, hired 2 or 3 people to go to work for us. They'll come back out of the service and went to work for us full time. And when we did, I guess that was like 62, 63, somewhere where he went full time. He worked for us all that time, just on weekends, went to the races, went all over the country, Daytona, whatever. And, you know, was involved in a lot of different things. And over a period of time, we got more people to work on the car. And where Dale was so good, he was good with people. Somebody just drive up in the driveway and want a job. We had a place to put them in. Dale put them in there, work them. And he was able to take a talent and know how far he could go with that talent, how far this guy could really come along in the company, what he could do, whether he could change tires or work on the engine or the rear end or whatever. And I guess over a period of time, I always look back, Melinda and myself think every once in a while about the people that graduated out of the Dale Inman School at Petty Enterprises. I'm going to read you off a few of them here. We've got Mike Beam, Barry Dotson, Jake Elder, Tony Glover, Steve Mills, Robbie Loomis, Robin Pimbleton. These guys won championships. They run races because they learned from Dale how things needed to be done. He was one of the first ones to come in and take a car in and completely disassemble it from one race to another, instead of waiting something broke or just checking wheel bearings and stuff like that. Completely disassemble the engines, the cars. And in doing that, that made those cars almost bulletproof. That's the reason we won a lot of races. But the deal is, the people didn't really understand the strategy of the way Dale sort of figured. He knew what he was trying to do. He watched the other people. He knew where they was going to change tires, get gas, whatever. Just showed like the Daytona in '81, when everybody would make a pit stop. They did their strategy. Then he comes back and does something different. Luckily, we didn't run out of gas, and we did win the race. But it was a gamble to a certain extent, but he knew we wasn't going to win the race if we didn't do something like that. And you see more and more of that stuff coming along. But of the 180-some, 90-some races that we won together, you know, there's probably dozens of them in there that I don't think about or he don't think about, made the right call at the right time to make the thing all work. And in doing that, it made it good for me, it made it good for him, it made it good for the racing. And, you know, from the standpoint of the things that he's accomplished from 1964 to 1984, he won 8 championships. And that's pretty good in 20 years. I mean, that, and like I say, almost 200 wins, 7 Daytonas, 27 races one year, 10 in a row. I mean, it takes a pretty good crew and crowd just to have a car running 10 races and not falling out of the race to begin with. But the big deal that Dale had that really made the whole thing work was people. He knew how to work with people. If he was going to get on to you, he'd take you off to the side and tell you about it. He didn't let you know it, get in front of somebody and really make you feel bad. He knew how to work people. And the deal of working people was what it was all about. we started out, we had 5 or 6 people, then we had 10 people, then we had 15 or 20 people. And, you know, as time went on, you know, he was able just to bring more and more people in, do different things, and make the whole deal. And I always looked at the way that Dale approached things was attitude, confidence, and focus. That's what he did with his people. And that's the reason he was able to be a winner like what he is. All right. I'm supposed to say this back here, right? It is now my honor on this 20th day of January 2012 to present the Hall of Fame inductee ring and officially induct Dale Inman into the NASCAR Hall of Fame.
I'm kind of familiar with this ring for the last 2 or 3 years. Richard's put it in my face a bunch of times. I want to introduce my family. Mary, my wife of some 52 years, my daughter Tina, her husband Chris, my granddaughter Taylor, Logan, my son Jeffrey, his wife Melissa, and my granddaughters Peyton and Addison. I'm so proud of all of you. Linda's here tonight, Linda Petty. Linda, I'm so glad you're here. You've meant so much to me and Mary over the years. It's just, there's no words for it. So glad you're here. And of course, Terry Labonte and his wife Kim. Terry, the 84 season was very special. And Terry, we won't have to worry about the Cowboys and the Indians this weekend, will we? They're gone. Richard hit on me and Maurice driving the race car to Riverside, California in 1958. He didn't clear that up very good. Him and Maurice was supposed to drive it. And he was out in the yard showing off and trying to walk on his hands and hurt his shoulder. So I was his substitute driver. And I won't go into that much, but you ain't raced till you drove the race car to Riverside, California and ran a 500-mile road course, then got home and rode down in Wilcox, Arizona, had to order a housing from another town, and it come in on the bus. I didn't think this country boy would ever get home. And then in today's world, we talk about track conditions. We might have a 10 degrees change in temperature. We might have a cloud cover. But I happened to be lucky enough to be with the Petties on the beach in 1958, the last race on the beach. 4 miles down. How many miles down the beach? A long way. And then you go through a sandbank up the beach when the tide's out. Juniors run there. And but you're talking about track conditions. Now that was some track conditions. And then we still get back to 1958, and back then the drivers had to be 21-year-old before they could drive. And that would affect a lot of it today, but Richard turned 21 July the 2nd, 1958, and 10 days later, me and him and the Red Miler took a convertible to Columbia, South Carolina. Half-mile dirt, slick track. We get down there, and Richard had never driven. We didn't know where he could last night. Joe Weatherly down there without a car. So we talked to Joe and said, if Richard needs help, will you help him? He said, well, sure. So, and of course, this was before radios and so we had to communicate with blackboards, and the signal for a driver was go to your head. Of course, the drivers today, even with radios, use some gestures, but they're pretty expensive. But Richard went to his head 2 or 3 times, and I'd go get Joe. And Joe'd come and put his helmet on, his little golfing gloves, and going home, I said, Richard, what was you doing? You was wanting relief, and you wouldn't come in. He said, oh, my head was itching, so. So it's come a long way, and of course, you probably hadn't raced until the mid-'60s when we'd leave home with a race car in a period of about 10 days. We'd run 5 or 6 races before we'd come home. And that was, I guess it was fun, I don't know. And then, of course, Mr. Helton hit on it last night. He said they used to run the Daytona race, the July race on the 4th of July, no matter what day it turned out on. So in '69, it was turned out to be on a Friday. And this was great, you know what I mean? The only problem was we run Dover on Sunday and had never seen the place. Nobody had ever seen it. And, of course, we won that one. So, of course, I'd like to say a special thanks to all branches of the military, the men and women that keep us free. You know, it is so great for the military. And of course, I'm proud that I served my time. You know what I mean? And it's just, when I look back over all this, you know, the wins, the Daytona wins, the championships and all that, but I think over the years, the people I've met, the places I've seen, the friends I've made both in and out of racing, that sticks out big now. Maybe years ago it wouldn't have, but I know some of us older people respect that. I'd like to thank the entire staff here at the Hall of Fame and NASCAR. What a wonderful job they've done for us, and they've been so nice to me and my family. And congratulations to the other 4 inductees and their family. I know they're very proud. And of course, you know, we're coming up on the 2012 season. Imagine that. And I want to wish all the luck in the world to all the active crew chiefs now, and especially to the 9 and the 43. Get after them, boys. And I just want to thank everybody. It's been such a big night tonight. Really a thrill for me, and thank you so much. Thank everybody.
When we come back, we'll go one-on-one with Dale Inman.
From kids playing together in the fields of Level Cross, North Carolina, to co-workers winning races across the country, Richard Petty and Dale Inman have their names side by side once again. So Dale, the King said one of your greatest assets was the art of observation. So I'm going to put you on the spot. What sort of observations have you been making tonight, other than having that ring of your own that he can stick in his face now?
Boy, he wore me out on this ring, you know, but yeah, I've got one on. I'm very proud of it, you know, and I don't know. It's just been such a long ride. And, you know, I hope it's not over. I'm going to be at Daytona, and I hope to see most of my friends down there again, you know.
Well, he revolutionized the art and role of the crew chief. NASCAR's most successful signal caller is now a member of the Hall of Fame.
Coming up, the induction of the founder of Wood Brothers Racing, Glenn Wood.
He did seem to have a different game face when he got in the race car. He was very intense.
You're going to see one of the great pit crews of all time.
Glenn Wood, he was the master.
The Wood Brothers, some of the nicest people in auto racing.
He made a lot of people famous.
Good evening. I'm Junior Johnson, and I want to talk to you about an old rival of mine, Glenn Wood. Me and Glenn, we go back a long way. Over the years, we've raced against each other as driver and car owner. Yes, Glenn Wood was a rival of mine, but a good one. I'm so proud to congratulate him on tonight's induction into the NASCAR Hall of Fame.
Welcome back to the 2012 NASCAR Hall of Fame induction ceremony. Please welcome back to the stage Mike Joy.
When you consider that the Glenn Wood Company was a single-car team and for many seasons ran a partial schedule of most of the Cup races, 98 Premier Series victories over 7 decades, well, those are the numbers behind the man that founded an organization that through 3 generations has done so much to define NASCAR as a family sport. I think half of Patrick County is here tonight to honor the pride of Stewart, Virginia, Glenn Wood.
I've been watching races with Curtis Turner running around the local tracks here, and somebody just mentioned, why don't we buy one? Having no idea that we'd ever, go past just a few weekends and give it up.
Here's a guy from the mountains of Virginia who just drove a race car. I think Glenn Wood is NASCAR.
Before he started racing, they would all load up and drive to Daytona Beach to watch Curtis Turner.
The best drivers in the business. Curtis Turner, a Ford.
He was a fan of the sport long before he started driving.
Glenn Wood, of course, started his career in modified racing, and he was the master.
I can remember Glenn Wood back when I was selling peanuts and popcorn at Bowman Gray Stadium.
I drove clean. I really never really spun anybody out to speak of. He could run with the best of them. I mean, he's outrun Curtis Turner over there and all of them. He was good as they come at Bowman Gray. I had a 58 Ford that I won all 3 races they had at the stadium that year.
He was the man to beat. In fact, he was almost impossible to beat. He was so good.
At Bowman Gray Stadium, you always needed extra traction coming off a corner. We decided to move the motor back. Every time we'd pull it back a little bit, the starter would hit the frame, or we'd cut that out, and then something else would hit over here. Now the seat had to be moved back, and he ended up in the back seat. I didn't know how I was going to drive it because it put me back in the back seat. Well, they kind of laughed about it to start with, but when the season was over, they weren't laughing.
Glenn really put his heart and soul into racing. You could tell how dedicated he was to racing.
But he was one guy that you could tell when he was racing would make a good car owner, because he knew how to get along with people. He knew how to motivate people.
Most of the family worked on the race cars with him, and I think that could have been led to part of their success.
There's one thing that they didn't figure out, didn't look at. It was 4 brothers.
He never chewed us out because he knew we was doing our very best.
Anybody who was a race driver would love to drive that car number 21.
The Curtis Turners, the David Pearsons, the Dale Jarretts, the Kel Yarboroughs, guys like that drove for Glenn Wood.
I've had more success out of their cars than any that I ever drove. I was tickled to death just to get to drive it.
They come for the checkered flag. David Pearson wins it by about 3.5 or 4 feet.
They certainly knew how to run races.
And now the Wood Brothers crew anxiously awaiting his approach. Glenn Wood told us what happens on a pit stop.
Well, I usually stop the car, and Leonard changes the front tire, and Rap Edwards the back with the air guns, and Delano, another brother, uses the jack, and Clay, another brother, helps with the back wheel. So then if anybody gets done a little ahead, and there's something yet to do, which one gets done first does it.
We went to Indianapolis in 1965. We had no idea what to expect.
A signal to Jim Clark brings him in for fuel.
His crew of pit stop specialists, recruited from American stock car racing, have him rolling toward the track again in a fantastic time of 17 seconds.
Well, I think it's teamwork more than anything else. We've had real good luck in the NASCAR pit stops, and I had all the boys that are with me down there, up here.
Of course, he won the race. And it's the most worldwide attention we ever got for anything.
They looked at it as a family business. You know, it could have been Glenwood and Brothers, Glenwood and Sons, Glenwood and Family, but they decided to call it Wood Brothers Racing. He epitomizes what NASCAR was and what NASCAR is and what NASCAR can be.
Trevor Bayne gets the win for the Wood Brothers.
It's real heartwarming, I guess, to know that we've run this long and still been able to win one. There was something special about that race. What is it? Jimmy Johnson says winning is the greatest feeling in the world. He's about right on that. It's one of them anyway.
To induct Glenn Wood, here is one of the greatest crew chiefs in NASCAR history, another of this sport's legendary Wood brothers, Leonard Wood.
Good evening, everyone. I'd just like to, what a night this is. I mean, we've got must be half of Patrick County here. And I would just like to say this is one awesome Hall of Fame. They've done such a great job of recognizing all the competitors, and it's so much to be seen in this place that it's well worth a tour. I'd like to congratulate all the inductees, all very deserving. I was highly honored when Glenn asked me to induct him in the NASCAR Hall of Fame, and I told him I would be more than happy to do so. Glenn has always been my big brother, and he still is. Glenn started racing 61 years ago. Glenn and his partner, Chris Williams, and I were riding down the road. Chris says, what we got to do is get some fame. And I'll have to say, this is as good as it gets. Glenn and I worked really well together. We believed in each other. And we was at Bowman Gray practicing, and when he was on the racetrack, his brakes would go to the floor. He'd come in the pits, and he'd say, I know you think I'm lying to you, but when he come in the pits, he had full pedal. And I said, no, Glenn, I know you're not lying to me. So the problem was that the exhaust was blowing back on the master cylinder, heating the fluid. So we just take the exhaust completely off. He goes out and wins the race. And I got to tell you, nobody was better at Bowman Gray than Mr. Glenn. So he had great success at Daytona Beach. He went down there 3 years in a row. He sat on pole, won his class. 58, he sat on pole and beat the record with 12 miles an hour. Beat all the modified with a sportsman car. Finished first, and then third overall. And then also in 59, he sat on pole in the new track in a convertible race. And of course, I know you guys already figured it out that Glenn and I both talk slow. We went to Indianapolis, pit Jim Clark. We just learned recently that when they heard us talk, they were thinking to themselves, I sure hope they can pit fast when they're talking. Glenn has been supporting the sport for a long, long time. They were having races on the beach back in 1947, before NASCAR was formed, and he's been to Daytona every year since. Not only did Glenn win 96 races as a driver, but he provided the opportunity for a lot of young drivers to win the first race. 75 drivers have driven for the Wood Brothers, 20 of which was the NASCAR's 50 greatest drivers. And the Wood Brothers feel extremely honored to have all those drivers driving for us. And I would like to point out there's a lot of former Wood Brothers drivers here tonight, and it's certainly a pleasure to see them. And I would like to have time to tell a story on one or two of them, but slow as I talk, we'd be here all night. Glenn was always fair, honest, gave good advice, needed no more than a handshake. Glenn was a great race car driver, great businessman, proud of his family. Eddie, Lynn, daughter Kim, his wife Bernice. And Glenn was so proud of Eddie, Lynn, and Kim for winning this past Daytona 500. And speaking of this Daytona 500, Richard Petty, I would like to thank you for walking with Brother Glenn to the winner's circle, one of the most celebrated winner's circles ever. And now on behalf of Eddie, Lynn, Kim, Bernice, the entire Wood Brothers race team, and myself, it is now my honor on this, the 20th day of January 2012, to present the Hall of Fame inductee ring and thus officially inducting one of NASCAR's 50 greatest drivers, my big brother, Glenn Wood. That's a long way from the cornfield.
Well, thank you, Leonard. See, I have to read part of mine. First off, I would like to thank the voters that voted for me. And thanks to NASCAR and the French family and the Wood Brothers, all of the employees at the Wood Brothers, and crew members and drivers. We've had so many great drivers, but David and Kay were most successful. So I'm proud to join them in the NASCAR Hall of Fame. You too, Kay. And 17 other drivers have won races in Wood Brothers cars, starting with Speedy Thompson, Joe Weatherly, Tiny Lund, Marvin Panch, I think he's here, Dan Gurney, Curtis Turner, Parnelli Jones, A.J. Foyt, Donnie Allison, Neil Bonnet, Buddy Baker, Kyle Petty, Dale Jarrett, Morgan Shepherd, Michael Waltrip, Elliott Sadler, and Trevor Bain, who won the last year's Daytona 500. Now, there's others that have driven our car, too. Jim Massey, Junior Johnson, Fred Lorenzen, Fireball Roberts, Ricky Rudd, Ken Schrader, Bill Elliott, Boris Said, Marcus Ambrose, and Ricky Stenhouse, Jr. So you see why I had to read that. And many thanks to Holman Moody, which helped me a lot in the old days, and all their employees, especially engine builder Tommy Turner and Howard Dehart. And thanks to Jack Rouse for his support over the years. And we couldn't have done this without sponsors over the years. Pure Later with Paul Cameron, and Sitco with Larry Britton, and I think he's here tonight. And our current sponsors, Ford Motor Company, Motorcraft, and Quick Lane. And I think Warner Hodgson was in there with us about 2 years, too. And I would like to acknowledge some of the old guys at Ford in the 1960s. Was John Cowley, Charlie Gray, Don Warman, Jack Passano, Mose Nolan, Don Sullivan, and Peter DiPaolo. And a special thanks to the current leaders at Ford Motor Company: Alan Mullally, Mark Fields, Jim Farley, Edsel Ford, Jamie Allison, and the rest of the Ford's racing staff. Now, Ford gave me a chance in 1956 when they asked me to be a part of the Ford racing team, which has led to this induction into the NASCAR Hall of Fame. And I'm proud to have been with Ford Motor Company for the past 60 years. And a thanks to Chris Williams, who was my partner when we started racing in 1950. And I'd like to thank all my friends and fans from the past 60-some years, and especially from Patrick County. A special thanks to all my brothers, Ray, Clay, and Ray Lee. I got that wrong. Clay, Ray Lee, and Delano and Leonard, and my sister Crystal. I've said it before, had it not been for Leonard and Ford Motor Company, I wouldn't have been here today. And to my family, Bernice, Eddie, Lynn, and Kim, and Carol, Nancy, and Terry, and to my grandchildren, John, Kevin, and Jordan. And praise Jordan. Jordan's the one who led me up here, in case you didn't know. And I would like to thank Quinn Collins for the producer of the biography the other day, for all his hard work. And I'd like to thank the guest speakers who were on that had such good words to say about me. And to all the NASCAR Hall of Fame staff here, too. They've been pampering me like I've never been before. Now, this is not just about me being inducted in the Hall of Fame. It's also about the Wood brothers. And it's about NASCAR. And I'm proud to have been a NASCAR driver and car owner for the past 60 years. And I'm proud of this great honor. And this is about two families, the Wood family and the Ford family, working together, which has resulted in me being here tonight. Thank you.
Coming up, we'll hear more from Glenn Wood.
You heard all the names, but think about those numbers. 75 drivers held the wheel for the Wood brothers. 20 of them named among NASCAR's 50 greatest drivers. NASCAR is a family, but for the Wood brothers, you really don't know where those lines begin and end. They are completely blurred together. Let's bring in Glenn Wood. We talked a lot about family because, as you said, NASCAR is such a family sport. We think of names like the Pettys, the Jarretts, the France family. The Wood brothers didn't just make a living in NASCAR. You all created a lifestyle.
Well, we just started out as a sort of family evening fun, and it's led to this. I'm just finding out how big this is. I've been here in the last two, and I didn't know it was this big then.
It's a little different when it's you up on stage, huh?
This is the greatest honor that you can receive in any Hall of Fame, I think.
Well, it's come a long way from those days in the sawmill of Stewart, Virginia. Glenn Wood has been a part of just about everything that has happened in NASCAR. Now he's a member and very deserving of the Hall of Fame.
Coming up, the induction of NASCAR modified legend, Richie Evans.
The Rapid Roman Richie Evans, National Modified Champion. He puts the big orange machine out in front, and Richie Evans continues to hold on. Evans pulls away off that second turn. At the line, the Rapid Roman, he's got it once again. Evans still out in front and on top.
The 61 of Richie Evans, setting fast time, starting deep in the pack, and then coming on to win.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jerry Cook, 6-time NASCAR National Modified Champion. Were Richie Evans and I rivals? You better believe it. Did the rivalry ever get heated and a little bit ugly? What do you think? But let me tell you, through it all, there was always a lot of respect between us. Like everyone else, I wish Richie was here tonight. If he was, I'd give him a little hell, maybe a lot, but then I'd congratulate him. Tonight, I want to congratulate him anyway and congratulate his family members in attendance on his induction into the NASCAR Hall of Fame.
From uptown Charlotte, North Carolina, we continue with the 2012 NASCAR Hall of Fame induction ceremony. Once again, from the Crown Ballroom, here's Mike Joy.
No one in the history of this sport epitomized the dual virtues of work hard, play hard, like Richie Evans. Spectacular driver, skilled chassis designer and builder, partier, prankster. We're at Martinsville for one of those big double headers, and on the thin taillight panel of Richie's Pinto is a mail slot, a brass one with a flap that opens for the postman to put the letters in, like the one on your front door, and it's hooked to a piece of hot air heating duct. And when it was a little quiet, I said, Richie, I don't know much about aerodynamics, but I know that isn't going to create a whole lot of downforce. Why is it there? And he looks around, nobody's near us, and he leans in and he says, because when they all walk by looking at that, they're not looking somewhere else. And to this day, 25, 26 years after his passing, everybody in modified racing will tell you that there's not one of those drivers that raced by the grace of God in 600 horsepower near as good as the Rapid Roman Richie Evans.
Richie Evans dominated modified racing, winning everywhere versus everyone. And that's why he's given the title, the King of Modifieds.
Richie Evans is the essence of stock car racing to guys like me, the grassroots, guys that have never had a chance to rub elbows with the Allisons and Pearsons and Pettys and Yarboroughs. Richie was that guy.
Richie grew up in rural New York. He street raced just for fun. But in 1961, a new racetrack opened, and Richie found a new hobby.
Some friends of his told him that if you'd go over to Utica Rome and try running a stock car, you can actually get paid for this. You know, it'd be more than running for pink slips. You know, you could get a trophy, you can get some cash. And he did it, you know, and by all accounts was kind of not very good at the start.
But Richie Evans got a lot better and started making a name for himself with his bright orange number 61, and by doing things his own way, which brought him into conflict with NASCAR.
If you ran a non-NASCAR race on the same day as a NASCAR race, you were liable to get suspended. And Utica Rome rained out. Richie and a bunch of other guys ended up going to Fulton Speedway and running a non-NASCAR race.
Came down to Utica Rome the next week and they wouldn't let him in the pits. So he ended up running outlaw for a while.
His time as an outlaw didn't slow him down. And in 1971, he returned to NASCAR with vengeance. Richie Evans won 9 championships and over 475 races, no matter how difficult the competition.
Had a fast car for the modified race.
They didn't like each other because they all, both of them used to win a lot.
The Rapid Roman gave me a little tap going into turn 1, and
when they started banging and beating each other, and I mean racing, I mean hard.
Down the back straightaway, we're coming to get the white flag. He put the bumper to me and knocked me up high.
I looked at my dad, I said, there's going to be a big wreck coming off of 4 on this last lap, you watch.
Going into turn 3, I caught it. It was amazing. I don't know how I went that fast, but I caught him going into turn 3. So I put the bumper to him and had him crossed up. I mean, there was no way he was going to win this race. I was going to beat him.
Off the turn, sideways goes Evans. Here comes Bodine, they bump. Bodine is at the wall. Evans high on the wall. He crosses the line first.
Last lap, can you tell us what happened?
He got crossed up in a corner, and I got outside of him, and he seen me coming and just drove me into the wall. You know, the man just doesn't know how to lose.
Richie, you're counting the last lap.
I got around him there, and he tried to just cut right into me and wreck me before I even got to the finish line.
But you're okay, Richie?
Oh, yeah. As long as you win, you're okay.
They had to tow the car into the winner's circle, and then his car is all beat up and smoking, and he just got that Richie Evans smile, you know. It's just beat Jeff Bodine, and I won another Martinsville race.
Richie Evans beat everybody. Had he gone to Cup, he would have won there too, but he never felt the need to try.
You know, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell what Richie's career might have been if he'd moved up to Cup. Richie just didn't seem to like that. He was very content, very happy racing those modifieds around the short tracks all over the East Coast.
He didn't have to, because the Cup stuff was just starting to grow back then, and there wasn't a lot of money in it. The stuff that he was doing, the money he was making when he was winning the championships and winning all the races, you know, he was racing 4, 5, 6 times a week. You know, and he'd win half of them, 3/4 of them every week, so he was making a good living. And the times he did race against the big guys, when the modifieds used to race at Daytona, he used to beat them.
He's the only guy I ever seen come down here and stir up all these short track drivers like he did. He come to Martinsville and tore their hiney up and went to Winston and blew them away over there. Now, I'll tell you, he put on a show for him. He's one of the best race drivers I ever seen.
He just was so good in a modified. I mean, he was what Dale Earnhardt and Richard Petty are to the Cup Series. That's what Richie was to modifieds.
You know, grassroots, you know, hard-nosed racer that worked on his cars, built his cars, didn't make any money, probably spent everything he had to race. You know, here he is in the Hall of Fame. That's, you know, that's a cool thing. I think not only for all the racers across the country, but for racing, you know, for the sport.
One of my fondest memories is going to Martinsville and watching those modified races and watching Richie race up there, and you talking about a legend in a series. He owned that modified series, 9-time champion, great guy, great for the series, and a perfect nominee for the Hall of Fame.
Sadly, we lost Richie Evans in a practice crash for the season's final race at Martinsville in 1985. But he lives on in the memories of family, friends, and fans, crewmen, many of whom are here tonight, including most of the Agawam 5. And here tonight to induct Richie into the NASCAR Hall of Fame, his crew chief for many years and many championships and co-conspirator, please welcome Billy Nasowitz.
Good evening. I hope everyone is having a good time tonight. I would like to take a moment to congratulate this year's inductees. Together, these 5 men have won 24 NASCAR championships and close to 1,000 races. What an incredible feat by an outstanding class. Richie's induction into the Hall of Fame represents the first driver inductee from outside of NASCAR's top series. As you heard, Richie was a 9-time champion, including 8 in a row, in NASCAR's oldest division, the modifieds. Growing up on his parents' farm in upstate New York, Richie left the farm to work and eventually own his own service stations. It was there that he began his racing career. Building hot rods to drag race at local tracks, Richie lined his service station walls with trophies. I remember his last drag car, a 427 54 Ford that was nearly unbeatable. A friend suggested that he try stock car racing at the newly built Utica Rome Speedway, where he could race for money instead of just trophies. Take his advice, he and his friends cut up that old drag car and made a stock car. Now, having watched Rich race the first couple of years at Utica Rome, I remember mentioning to my friends, it's too bad he cut that drag car up because he's never going to make it in the stock car racing. Well, we can see where that came out. With hard work and perseverance, Richie began winning races. In 1973, he was noticed by a man who would become his longtime sponsor and friend, Gene DeWitt. Gene would later say that in Richie he saw a diamond in the rough. With Gene's help, Richie was able to showcase his talents, his diversity, by winning on NASCAR's biggest tracks at Daytona and Pocono, to its smallest ones like Islip, Long Island, and North Carolina's own Bowman Gray Stadium. Richie loved the modifieds. With the respect of his competitors and promoters, he became the face of the division. Richie was a person that if you ever met him, you were left with a lasting impression. As Richie's crew chief for 11 years, he left me with 2 lifelong lessons. 1, a hard work ethic, and 2, to enjoy whatever you're doing. Because he would later say, we're all just passing through. It's now my honor, on this 20th day of January 2012, to present the Hall of Fame inductee ring and officially induct NASCAR's greatest modified driver into the Hall of Fame. Accepting his induction, please welcome Richie's wife, Lynn Evans.
Good evening. Rich, I've had to do a lot of things for you over the years, but this time I wish you could be here to accept this honor. I know you're here in spirit as the number 61 appears often in my life. Even as I checked into the hotel, the number 61 came up. I'd like to congratulate Dale Inman, Kelly Yarborough, Glenn Wood, and Darrell Waltrip at being inducted in NASCAR's Hall of Fame Class 2012 with Rich. Rich would be so honored and humbled to be included with the inductees past, present, and future. What a great honor. I'd also like to thank the nominating committee for including Rich. With so many deserving people, the task must have been difficult. I'd especially like to thank the Hall of Fame voting panel for stepping outside the box and making Rich the first driver inductee not to have raced in NASCAR's top series full-time. You have now given hope to thousands of NASCAR competitors throughout the country to maybe someday reach their dream. I'd like to thank NASCAR for providing a stage for competitors to showcase their talents and for the media for bringing that stage to millions of fans. Every champion driver has a championship team. Rich started with the late Gene DeWitt, his longtime sponsor and friend, who along with the family, Byron, Linda, and Jamie, helped fulfill his dreams. I'd like to thank them along with crew chief Billy Nazowitz and all of Rich's crew over the years, many who are here tonight. Last but not least, I'd like to say thanks to all of his fans who have kept his memory alive. Racing 4 to 5 times a week enabled Rich to build a huge fan following. Rich liked nothing better than to share a story with his friends after a race. One of the things he was most proud of was being voted most popular driver 9 times, while still enjoying the success on the track. Thank you again for honoring Rich.
The induction of 3-time NASCAR Sprint Cup champion and 4-time Daytona 500 champion, Cale Yarborough.
Cale Yarborough, car number 11, is back out racing again.
The reigning stock car champion, 38-year-old Cale Yarborough, Evansville, South Carolina.
Cale is flat out to pass.
Cale Yarborough focuses not on passing, but to keep from being passed. The car length that counts belongs to Timminsville, South Carolina's giant, Cale Yarborough.
Good evening, I'm Donnie Allison, the guy who helped make Cale Yarborough famous, as some of you might recall. While many people might remember only the Daytona infield tussle we had 33 years ago, me and Cale had a lot of battles where they belonged, on the racetrack. Cale was like a bulldog, and he was never one to back down, and I can attest to that. And if you don't believe me, check out the video from the closing laps of the 1979 Daytona 500 at the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Of course, there was a lot more to my career than that one incident, and that was certainly the case when it came to Cale Yarborough. A 3-time champion, and tonight a NASCAR Hall of Fame inductee. Congratulations, Cale.
Welcome back to the NASCAR Hall of Fame induction ceremony from Charlotte, North Carolina, as the third class enters the hall tonight. Once again, from the Crown Ballroom, Mike Joy.
From 1976 through 78, Junior Johnson put a strong car underneath him that would not break, and Cale Yarborough ruled the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series. When his career was complete, it was apparent that he was a champion with consistency and a winner of 83 Cup races. No one charged harder lap after lap. And on a caution period, you saw Cale pull those gloves up tight and get up on the wheel. No one was tougher to beat. There was only one place you'd find Yarborough's name toward the back: the phone book.
Cale Yarborough began his NASCAR career at the age of 17 by sneaking onto the track at the 1957 Southern 500.
They pulled him off the track, and first thing they knew, he was back out on the racetrack again, and so he was a bulldog.
He then spent the next 8 years driving for over a dozen car owners before catching the eye of Ford Racing.
Ford gave him the ride, and then they first, put him in a banjo race car.
The move to Banjo Matthews was a real milestone move for him, though. I don't know anybody on the circuit that was more respected than Banjo Matthews. He was the best type of person to run under because he knew everything about a race car you could know.
Banjo helped me a lot. He gave me the first real good ride that I had.
He was unbelievable in that race car because, he got to the front and he never slowed down.
Cale on the racetrack produced thrills and chills.
Yarborough's trying to pass. They're in deep trouble.
Cale went completely out of the racetrack and down where the cars were parked on the outside. I said, well, he probably hurt himself. 2 seconds later, there he is walking back towards the garage area.
Well, it felt about like those astronauts been up in space 8 days. It felt about like 8 days I was up there, too.
Most people would have faked being hurt after that ride.
But Banjo settled Cale down to where he was becoming a 500-mile race driver.
At the end of the season, Ford put me with the Wood Brothers, took me from Banjo and put me with the Wood Brothers.
And the Wood Brothers always had one of the best teams. But Cale, he was going to run that thing as hard as it would go from start to finish. And they made their system adapt to that, and as a result, they won a lot of races together.
4 big speedway races, a new record in one season, and the first time victory before a hometown crowd.
Right, do it at home, that makes it better than anything in the world. We won races, and I was there with them for 5 years until Ford decided that they were going to pull out of racing.
And so we didn't know what we was going to do. So he decided to go up and try IndyCar a little bit.
And when I came back looking for a ride, I needed a ride, Junior Johnson needed a driver.
Cale ran 2 years for Junior Johnson and Associates before winning the first of 3 consecutive championships in 1976.
Neither one of us was running for the championship. We was just running to win. We just wound up winning the dead blame championship, and then we come back 1 or 2 more right after it.
I always told him he drove harder down the straightaway than I did in the corner. He'd be up there just a digging with that thing, and that was his persona as far as a driver.
We had a good team, and Junior was dedicated, and I was dedicated to winning races and winning championships, and it just worked out for us.
To be able to manhandle those things around like that and win 3 championships in a row in that era was pretty special.
He is one of the heroes of the sport. To see him that night on stage when I got my 3rd championship, and just a huge honor.
One of the most spectacular races in Cale's career and in NASCAR history was the 1979 Daytona 500.
It all come down to the finale, and it just left everybody breathless.
Donnie Allison throws the block. Cale hits him. He slides. Donnie Allison slides. Can they hit again?
I was pretty hot. He cost me a chance of winning another Daytona 500.
And there's a fight between Cale Yarborough and Donnie Allison.
And Bobby Allison is stopped by his brother to help.
Well, I got out of the car, and of course, that whole deal broke loose, and they had the TV cameras on us.
You know, the whole nation was getting to see this deal.
That really helped racing. Showed that we could be competitive on TV because they put on a good show.
Despite winning a record-setting 14 poles in the 1980 season and finishing second in the championship standings, Cale decided to leave Junior Johnson & Associates so that he could run a part-time schedule and have more time to spend with his family. Cale ran 2 years with MC Anderson in 1981 and 1982, collecting 5 wins before leaving to drive for Harry Renier. That year, Cale flipped his car while qualifying for the Daytona 500 at over 200 miles per hour.
Only thing you want to know when the guy in the car didn't run 200 miles an hour. Anyway, brought that car back and qualified it, and then Cale was able to win the race with the backup car.
In 1984, Cale became only the second driver ever to win back-to-back Daytona 500s.
At the line, it is Cale Yarborough. He's done it again.
Every time Cale showed up for Daytona, you knew he was going to be strong. You knew he was going to be strong for the pole and for the win. He led a lot of laps and always ran up front. He was one of the guys that you had to contend with.
And that's the pinnacle of our sport. And to go down there and win that thing 4 times, I mean, that says a lot. So, again, Cale he didn't just go win a bunch of races. He won big races, too. He won the big ones, he won the most important ones, and he won a lot.
All you got to do is open the record book, and you'll see he's one of the best of all times.
To induct Cale is another giant of our sport. He founded Motor Racing Network Radio for Bill France, brought this sport into hundreds of thousands of living rooms and car radios each week, and then convinced CBS to televise the Daytona 500 flag to flag. And when you saw that fist pump after winning the 500 from Cale, it was followed with a thank you, CBS, and he was thanking the man I'm about to introduce. By far, the greatest storyteller in the history of broadcasting this sport on radio and TV, Ken Squire.
Thank you very much. Cale Yarborough. He was always about believing in oneself, self-reliance, and the imagination to test it and test it completely. Dream big was Cale. Now that was a gift that Julian and his mother, Hannah Mae, they provided their 3 sons down there on that small farm in Timmonsville, South Carolina. And for Cale, it became his strongest suit. When he was a pup, his dad took him to a stock car race. Just a couple of guys getting a little dusty. On a Thursday night, it might have been in Columbia. On Friday, it would have been Florence. Saturday was Sumter. And he just imagining that he would be out there someday with Buck and Lee and Gober Sozeby. Just 10 years old. And for him, that's still unforgettable. Cale was sure that his dad was going to be a racer. And then there was that plane crash. His number 1 guy with whom he sat by his radio on the farm and listened to that first Darlington 500 and had told Cale that the next year they'd be 17 miles from Timmonsville for sure on Labor Day to see that race. Farm folk, resilient, risk takers. Cale just elected to take his risk a little different from the family and the neighbors. But talk about determination and self-reliance. Hard times, you bet. Dead broke, started racing at 15, often. His mother, later in a television broadcast, they did an interview with her, and she remembered saying to Cale, "Cale, why do you do it?" Said the same thing when he took up boxing when he was 13. Said the same thing when he took up skydiving. Said the same thing when he got into the business of parachuting one time missed the target by 2 miles. And then there was the Cale Yarborough Aerial and Auto Stunt Show. 3 acts. Cale, why do you do it? And then there was the wrestler alligating. Once was enough. He went where the chances so often were slim to none. And he always did it against the biggest odds. Persistent? Oh, you bet. He pushed and prodded until the Timmonsville Flash became a name to be reckoned with. Early days on those Southern Carolina short tracks, he drove hard. He drove so hard that he would claim after race that he would come in and get sick to his stomach. Well, the first time he won a major race, that was the Atlanta 500 for the Wood brothers. He got out of that race car and he said he threw up 2 quarts of Valvoline. Driving for Junior Johnson, childhood hero, he heard the command from Junior that really defined his style. 4 words with which he really chimed. Junior Johnson ordered, "Go to the front." It's good enough for him, fit his style. It was a style that made a very famous American author, William Neely, Bill Neely, later write in one of his books, "There is no doubt that Cale Yarborough will go down in history as the hardest charger who ever lived, the most aggressive of them all." Richard Petty, he said it differently. He said, if Cale's just keeping up, you know he's doing as best as he can on that day. Otherwise, he'd be in front of you. He was, and still is today, the real deal. Sports followers of all stripes recognized it. February 1983. When that race was over, J.J. O'Malley, lead line of the National Speed Sport News, said, Cale Yarborough took 25 million people for a Sunday afternoon ride to Victory Lane in the silver anniversary Daytona. That was when he carried that CBS camera and the audio in that Waddell Wilson prepared Pontiac number 28. And let me add something here that wasn't talked about in the script and so on. But prior to that race, CBS had those big meetings up in New York about how they were going to make it different. Shoot, they'd been doing the Daytona 500 since 1979. So what are you going to do differently? And the idea was brought forth that perhaps the thing to do would be to talk to the drivers during the race. For heaven's sakes, what are you talking about? You can't talk to the drivers while they're in the race. They're risking their lives. What is all that about? Well, maybe we could talk to them while they're under caution. Well, that's the worst idea we've ever heard. Well, can we make one phone call, just one? So I called Cale, and I laid out the deal, and there was dead silence. There wasn't a word. And then Cale said, I'll tell you what, I'll do it on one condition. If you let me, from inside my car, describe what it feels like to come down to start the Daytona 500. Jesus, God, there is a Lord. Oh, my heart. And he did it. And he set the table for that broadcast in 1983. 6 cautions. Last caution came with 33 laps to go. Went under caution. Cale's running fourth and hanging in there. And the world is watching and listening to him at that time talk about what he could do with this. And it reminded me in later years of those great moments that come in sport, those very special moments. When a great athlete tells you what he's going to do, and he goes out and does it. So, Cale, you're running fourth. You've got the giant, Buddy Baker, fastest 500 to date in history, 1980 up in front. You've got Joe Ruttman running in second, driving the finest performance of Joe Ruttman's life. And you got the kid from the Dawsonville Pool Hall there, the new kid on the block. He's running right around there too, looking pretty good, Bill Elliott. Cale's tagging along. So what are you going to do, Cale, if you're going to win this 500? And he told us what he was going to do. That he was going to run back there, try to stay with those leaders, but when it came to the last lap, he was going to go for it, and he would be there. That story was done 80 years before in the World Series in Chicago. The Yankee Clipper, Joe Louis, it's one of the most remembered stories in the history of baseball. Ruth gets up to bat against the Cubs, takes that bat, didn't like at all the pitcher on the other side, Root. And he waved that bat at him, then waved it up at center field. And Root reared back, he let her fling, and the Babe ran that rascal right up over the fence. It's one of those moments that's not forgotten. And Cale replicated that. He duplicated that in '83. Gets down to it in those last laps, the final 11 laps of that race, nose to tail, tail's tail gunner. And he was giving America the most dramatic sense of what this sport was all about. Those big old cars swishing around out there and him holding on, guiding that thing through those corners. White flag, 1 lap to go. He mashes the throttle. He looked like a rattlesnake striking down to the inside, came around through 2 into the backstretch, and there was a moment as he slipped by Elliott, slipped by Rutten, pulls alongside Baker. Oh, my heart, here comes 79 all over again. The two of them start down the backstretch, and then Baker pulled away, and he won that race. This was Cale's time, and in that moment he came through. Just like that Babe Ruth story from 80 years past this year. He called the shot and showed America how it's done, but more important, with that aggressive charge, he told us so much about the style that was the sport, and he said so much about the racer. So hear it again. You've heard it all night, but hear it once again. Cale Yarborough, with a faithful and trusting woman by him every step of the way, became 3-time, first time in NASCAR history, consecutive champion of the most competitive racing series in the world. 4-time winner of the Great American Race. And recognized throughout the game. He was an 85, 3-time winner. I'm always trying to get him 2 more. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure and indeed biggest honor I've had that on this 20th day of January, the year 2012, to present the Hall of Fame inductee ring and the official induction into the NASCAR Hall of Fame to Cale Yarborough.
Thank you, Ken. Excuse me. You know, tonight, as far as I'm concerned, is let me get my glasses on so I can see. As far as I'm concerned, tonight is a thank you night for so many people that made it possible for me to be here tonight. You know, racing is kind of like a big, tall ladder. When you begin, you start off on the bottom step of that ladder, and it's a long, hard climb to the top. But I feel like tonight that I'm finally standing on the top step. It's been tough. A lot of ups and downs, a lot of hard times. But, you know, there are 5 of us here tonight, and I congratulate each one of them. And thank you, Donnie, for doing my video for me. But the first one I want to thank is my wife, Betty Jo, of almost 53 years of putting up with me. And sticking with me throughout some awful hard times, I'm going to tell you. She should be standing right here with me tonight. I didn't get here by myself. I had help, and she was my biggest help. But I would like to tell a little story about when we first moved to Charlotte in the early 60s. John Holman gave me a job at Holman and Moody's, sweeping the floor for $1.25 an hour. And Betty Jo and Julie and I, she was our only little girl at the time, we moved to Charlotte and lived in a little old cabin that John Holman let us live in, except he charged us rent. We had to pay for it, but the only thing I owned to my name was my wife and my daughter. We were flat broke when we got here. So a few weeks ago, I was out in my farm shop and the telephone rang, and I knew Betty Jo had gone to Florence, I think, and knew she wasn't going to answer it, so I picked it up and answered it. And it was a lady from Columbia, South Carolina that owns a very, very high-priced women's dress store. And she says, would you please tell Betty Jo that her outfit for the induction banquet is in? I says, okay, I'll tell her. I knew this was going to hurt. Anyway, after I hung up, I got to thinking about the hard times that we went through, and she stuck with me through some awful hard times. And I thought we had a budget we could go by. You know, just had to stick with it. And we'd go to the grocery store on Saturday night to buy enough groceries to last out the week. So we were there one Saturday night, and we had our grocery cart filled with everything we thought we could afford. We had to keep a count of everything that we bought so we could pay for it when we got to the checkout counter. Well, we were coming down the last aisle going to the checkout counter and happened to come across a pallet full of cans of black-eyed peas that were on sale for 10 cents a can. 10 cents a can, a big can too. So we talked about it, and she agreed. We went back and put all the stuff that we'd bought back in everywhere it was supposed to be. Went back to that black-eyed peas pallet and bought every can of black-eyed peas that we could afford to buy. Now, we had black-eyed peas for breakfast. We had black-eyed peas for dinner. Had black-eyed peas for supper. For a long time. Well, honey, I'm glad you went and bought that outfit because you look good in it. And I'm glad we could afford it. But, needless to say, this coming week we're going to be looking for another black-eyed pea singer. I've got to thank my daughters, 3 daughters, Julie, Kelly, and BJ. All my grandkids, they're all here tonight, thank goodness. Barley, Caleb, Julian, Catherine, Annie Gray, and Will. And I got to thank my mother. Yes, she did say, "Why did you do it? Why do you do it?" But she stuck with me throughout my whole racing career. And thank you, Mama. And she may get mad for telling this, but her next birthday, she'll be 91 years old, and she's going strong. I'm going to tell you. And she looks like she's 60. I wish I was in that good a shape. Boy. And I got 2 brothers, Jerry and JC. They're both with me here tonight, and thank you for coming. As I said, this is a thank you night for me. All I can do is thank the people that made it possible for me to climb that long, tough ladder. And I have one that's here with me tonight that gave me my first full-time ride as I was a young teenager on the short dirt tracks of South Carolina. And he's here's my guest tonight, J.N. Wilson. Thank you, J.N., for getting me started. That's been a long time ago, too. Marion Cox, who gave me a lot of good rides in my early career, and I learned a lot from him. Julian Busink, who brought a car to Darlington and Daytona for me a few times during my early days, and he helped me an awful lot. Then I teamed up with Herman Beam for the first full-time ride on the Grand National Circuit, which is the Winston Cup now, but back then it was called the Grand National. And then a man by the name of Jack Passano, he was head of racing for Ford Motor Company, helped me an awful lot. Parts, helping me get started, and I can tell you, if it hadn't been for Jack Passano, I'm sure I wouldn't be here tonight. And thank you, Jack. John Holman, who gave me my first job here at Holman & Moody's, sweeping the floors. I was glad to have it. $1.25 an hour, but that's where it all started. Ralph Moody, who taught me an awful lot about this sport. Then there was Kenny Myler, who we had a good run with. We were running a year-old car that Ford was letting us run, 1964 Ford, 1965. Kenny gave me my first win in Valdosta, Georgia, on a half-mile dirt track in 1965. That dirt track racing was tough back then. Then I went with Banjo Matthews, and Banjo taught me a lot. It's kind of like Humpy said in the movie there. He taught me to run those 500-mile races. He taught me how to do it. And then, of course, it's Glenn Wood. You can't say enough about the Wood brothers. They really put me in a top-notch car, and we won races. And I'll tell you this. I am so honored and so pleased to be inducted in the same class with Glenn Wood. It's just great. Turned out just right. And then there was Leonard Wood. Leonard, you won't be far behind us, bud. You deserve every bit of it. Then there's Rollo Ballstead, who gave me my first ride at the Indianapolis 500. Drove 2 years for him there. And then Gene White signed me a 2-year contract to drive his Indy cars on the whole Indy circuit for 2 years. And I did, because Ford had pulled out of racing and we didn't know what was going to happen next year. I had so many bills to pay, I had to know where a few dollars was coming from, so I signed with Gene White. But I ran for Gene White for 2 years, and I came back and wanted to come back to NASCAR, wanted to come back to stock car racing. And as you heard, Junior was looking for a driver, and I was looking for a ride. And boy, we hooked up, and we had a good ride for sure. Good ride. 3 championships, consecutive championships. My first championship, Junior's first championship. Junior, can't thank you enough, man. We had a good ride. And then I decided for some reason, had I stayed with Junior, there's no telling how many championships. Richard Petty, you don't know telling how many championships we might have won. You might not have been in the picture. But anyway, I wanted to spend more time with my family, so I decided I'd cut my schedule back. Would like to run about 15 or 16 races. And that's what I did. I told Junior that I was going to back off some. And so I signed up with MC Anderson, 3-year contract to run 16 races a year. We won so many races in the first 2 years, and the 3rd year he wanted to run for the championship. I said, look, MC, that's not what the contract says. I said, I'm going to run a limited schedule. So I left MC and I went to Harry Ranier and, of course, Wardell Wilson. And we did things that it's almost unbelievable. We had a great run. I had so many good crew chiefs that helped me out so much throughout the years. And not only the crew chiefs, I had a lot of good crewmen too. But let me tell you, after I got through with Harry Ranier, I formed my own team, like Darrell did and Buddy did, and all of us did. And boy, that was a big mistake, I'll tell you. And I drove part-time, and I had different drivers. I got Dale Jarrett started, and all. And I never could win a race in my car. I could win in everybody else's car, but never did win in my car. The only race I won as a team owner was with John Andretti. We won the Firecracker 400, and sometime, what year was it? I forgot. But we won that 1 year, and John's here tonight, and it was good to see him. But once again, I just want to thank my family. I want to thank my friends. I want to thank my fans. I want to thank the people that voted for me. And I want to thank NASCAR. But most of all, thank you, Lord. Thank you.
When we come back, we'll go one-on-one with Cale Yarborough.
All with a common theme, determination and fearlessness. Cale Yarborough only did things one way, flat out. You have been called NASCAR's toughest driver. Would you agree with that title?
Well, if that's what they say, I'll have to agree with it, I guess.
You also talked about reaching the top rung of the ladder. What about that climb?
It was a long, hard climb. But thank goodness, as I said, I'm standing on on the top step tonight, and it's as high as you can go, but they can't knock me down.
His mantra, get to the front. He does it again. The front of the class, a member of NASCAR's Hall of Fame.
Coming up, the induction of another three-time champion, Darrell Waltrip.
Darrell Waltrip, one of the youngsters, one of the bright newcomers to automobile racing.
Often humorous, sometimes a bit outspoken, but rarely silent.
I tell you, Darrell's not to be denied. He really drove a good, hard race.
The Daytona 500 belongs to Franklin, Tennessee's Darrell Waltrip.
Oh, won the Daytona 500! I won the Daytona 500!
Good evening, everyone. I'm Bobby Allison. Calling me in DW rivals, well, that's putting it mildly. And as a lot of people remember, back in our day, we invested almost as much energy into not liking each other as we did into our racing. But you know what? The fans loved it, and it was good for NASCAR. We put on some good shows. It kept things interesting. Darrell, I have to admit it, you are a great champion. Congratulations, Darrell, on being inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame. And now I also have to admit, darn it, you deserve it.
Some of racing's greatest successes have come from the admiration and disdain of its most polarizing figures. You know, the drivers that half the crowd wanted to see win every week and the other half wanted to see anybody but. And bridging the eras between Lee Petty and Dale Earnhardt, Darrell Waltrip won 3 championships, entertaining us all the while. And from the moment when he first burst on the scene with an ex-Mario Andretti Ford, to this October, when his ride around the treacherous circuit at Bathurst, Australia in a V8 supercar was seen and enjoyed on YouTube around the world, he entertains us still as the lead analyst for Fox Sports and Speed. Cale famously nicknamed him Jaws. Boy, is that not the best racing nickname ever? And it was the most appropriate. But tonight, we will call Darrell Waltrip a NASCAR Hall of Famer.
And as the youngster Darrell Waltrip.
Darrell Waltrip began his storied NASCAR career in 1972, proving to fans nationwide he was a natural talent in stock car racing. In just his first 3 seasons, Waltrip compiled 9 top 5 finishes and 19 top 10s.
And it just came to me. It just, I'd sat in it long enough, I'd watched enough races that I knew exactly what to do.
Waltrip going down low. He's got him. Oh, what a great move by Waltrip.
The guy just flat had the talent. He could wrestle it out of a car.
He knew when to race and when not to. And a lot of times that's the difference.
First time I ever remember seeing Darrell at all. He was doing a radio show in Daytona. Darrell got up and he said, "I'm Darrell Waltrip from Franklin, Tennessee. I'm the guy that's going to retire Richard Petty." The people just went, "What did he just say?"
When Darrell came into cup racing, he took the attitude that, I'm the new young guy, and he made a lot of noise. And of course, it sold tickets, and so NASCAR liked that.
He was always a smart mouth person, but that was his way of getting attention.
A lot of times we're not the fastest, but when the green flag comes out, we go to the front.
You know, when it's your turn to win or your track, I guess you're just going to win no matter what. But it looked like kind of an easier day for you. That's the problem with me. I make it look too easy.
He wouldn't shut up. He never could stop talking.
You know, we snookered them at Darlington, but we didn't snooker them today. We just outrun them.
I would like to hope that I wasn't quite that open in my career.
He could talk. That's when the movie Jaws came out. I think it was in Darlington or Shaw Darlington probably that he crashed me one day.
He doesn't get out of the way, and we've got cars
is spinning all over the track. Both leaders are out.
When I came in, some of the news reporter asked me what happened. I just said, Jaws got me.
He said, it's always running that mouth and tearing up cars. Looked like Jaws to me.
But it was Yarborough that did the talking in 1980 when he told Darrell of his departure from Junior Johnson Racing, paving the way for Waltrip to take his place.
I knew Darrell had a lot of talent, and I felt like if I was going to leave one of the best positions in the country in racing, that I should let somebody know about it.
When I lost Cale, I knew that he was the next up-and-comer.
Junior Johnson, I mean, the man's a legend. When I was growing up, he was one of my heroes. Now this man named Junior Johnson wants me to drive his race car.
Waltrip signed with Junior Johnson Racing in 1981.
We had a driver that had a swagger to him. He had an edge to him. He didn't mind ruffling a lot of feathers. We came off with a brashness that I think really helped us, take it to our competition and eventually, helped lead us to a championship in 81.
Darrell Waltrip receives the checkered flag and first place.
It's been the lucky weeks. Last week winning in Richmond and right here at Rockingham. Darrell Waltrip wins again.
I remember going to North Wilkesboro Speedway as a kid. It was only 45 minutes up the road, and watching Darrell win every time in that car.
The Duke crew is in victory lane once again with Darrell Waltrip in the winner's circle.
Darrell Waltrip finished a comfortable 6th position, captured the 1981 championship.
After 1981, Darrell went on to win 2 more championships with Junior Johnson, 1982 and 1985, winning a total of 48 races with the future Hall of Famer.
Darrell Waltrip, a hand in the air, a wave to the crowd. What a Hollywood ending.
But one win seemed to elude him until 1989 with Hendrick Motorsports.
After 17 years of effort, the Daytona 500 belongs to Franklin, Tennessee's Darrell Waltrip. He's done it. He's done it.
It was very satisfying to finally have that nugget that he wanted to go on top of everything else that he'd already earned. It was so fitting.
Oh, I won the Daytona 500. I won the Daytona 500.
Darrell, how long?
Wait. This is the Daytona 500, isn't it? You bet. Don't tell me it isn't.
But for Darrell, it was really something that he wanted to accomplish. I remember doing the Icky Shuffle and throwing his helmet down, and it was a lot of fun.
But Waltrip wasn't finished there. In 1991, he went on to win his first race as a car owner.
Darrell Waltrip wins the first Union 400 at North Wilkesboro. Man, I'm so happy. This is better than Daytona. I don't care if it ain't Daytona. I love it.
He's not happy at all. He's look at this.
With 84 career wins, Darrell Waltrip left his seat behind the wheel in 2000 for a seat in the booth, once again putting his own twist at his new job.
Boogity, boogity, boogity. Let's go racing, boys.
From Franklin, Tennessee to the hearts of millions, Darrell Waltrip has cemented his legacy in the NASCAR Hall of Fame.
As you'll hear, with Darrell, it's all about family, and he has several families here tonight. His family, his racing family, and his Fox family. And I'm very proud to introduce a member of our NASCAR on Fox family, the architect of 2 of Darrell's 3 championships from the pit box and his Daytona 500 victory. Please welcome Jeff Hammond.
Oh, me. If y'all just knew how nervous I am right now. Because if I mess this up, the man sitting in the front row is going to fire me right on the spot. That's another story for another day. Stevie, you ready to have some fun? Brother, I got your back, even when your back's against the wall. But before we start, the first thing I want to do, I want to congratulate the Evans family, Dale Inman, Mr. Wood, and of course my old buddy Cale. Congratulations. What each has brought to the sport of NASCAR is immeasurable, and tonight it's only fitting that you take your rightful place in this Hall of Fame. They really should probably call it the Hall of Heroes, because all my heroes are here. But now it's time to honor the fifth and final member of the class of 2012. So let me set the stage for a few of our newer fans here in NASCAR. I worked for that man, Junior Johnson. I worked with that man, Cale Yarborough. I worked with and eventually for that man, Darrell Waltrip. You know, when Cale decided at the end of the 1980 season to cut back to a partial schedule, why in the world did it have to be Darrell Waltrip that walked through the door of the number 11 shop? You know, now Darrell knows this, okay? I didn't like him, and I didn't want him to be our driver. Part of it was because he was beating us on the track more frequently. But the other part was, and you've heard this before, he would never shut up. He was always running his mouth. Our sport has never seen the likes of Darrell Waltrip before, both on the track or off the track. I mean, things got off to a rocky start in 1981 with our new driver and our new sponsor, Mountain Dew. When Darrell first came in, the first thing he wanted to do was to tell us what was wrong with our race cars. Now, can you believe that? I mean, those race cars had won 3 straight championships. But here he was wanting to tell us what he wanted changed. Well, needless to say, things didn't go over very well. The crew didn't like him. He didn't like the crew. And it stayed that way until Junior got fed up with it. And he gave all of us, Darrell included, a lesson in economics. Well, actually, it was pretty simple math. The bickering was to stop immediately. Everyone would either find a way to work together, or, Darrell included, everyone would find their way to the unemployment line together. Now, folks, I don't know about you, but that's an attention getter, Junior Johnson style. Well, guess what? We started running better. We were, shall we say, motivated. Together, we won 12 races in the championship in 1981. In 1982, with virtually a whole new team and me as the head crew chief, we won 12 more races in our second championship. We won again in 1985, making up a huge point deficit and overtaking Bill Elliott. There is a reason why Darrell was named NASCAR Driver of the Decade for the 80s. And the record books don't lie. Think about it. From 1977 to 1987, Darrell never finished lower than 5th in the points. Now, as much as Darrell would absolutely love, I mean, he would love for me to talk about all the incredible statistics that he has accomplished, but there's not simply enough time to do it. Sorry, Darrell. I know that really hurts, but Darrell was the bridge from old school NASCAR to the modern era of our sport. The media loved him, very simply because, as he likes to say, there wasn't a controversy that he couldn't add to. And this is part that I can't believe I wrote this in here. I have to admit, he was good looking. And he never met a camera or a microphone that he didn't like. But you know, his rapid fire wit off the track was only exceeded by his God-given talent on the track. You're a pretty incredible guy. You really were. And he truly was NASCAR's version of Muhammad Ali. I think Brian France would readily admit that Darrell, with his passion and love for our sport, helped to take NASCAR to another level when it was needed. So, buddy, here we are together after all these years. You know, for the last 11 years, we've been on a new team, our NASCAR on Fox team, led by our boss, David Hill. That's the guy I was talking about. If I mess this up, he'll be looking at me. But Mr. Hill, a lot like Junior Johnson, accepts nothing but the best from all of us, including Mike Joy and Krista, all of us, each and every race weekend. One of the coolest things that happened to me was in March of 2007 when Darrell's business manager, Van Colley, called me on his cell phone. He said, "Hey, buddy, I got some great news. DW and you have been nominated for an Emmy for your work on Fox." I said, "Whoa, man, how wonderful is this?" So here we were once again, all these many years later, both in our second careers, sharing some more success together. I venture to say our sport will never see the likes of Darrell Waltrip ever again. He truly is one to a box. Big brother, why don't you come up here and join me? Because right now it is my honor on the 20th day of January 2012 to present you with your inductee ring to to officially induct Darrell Waltrip into the NASCAR Hall of Fame.
Well, now, thank you, Jeff. I got to straighten something out right up front before we can get to any of this other stuff. It wasn't that I talked that much. Those other guys didn't talk at all. And so it just looked like I was talking a lot. I had to fill in the blanks. You know, if there was something that needed to be explained, DW had to explain it. So it looked like that I talked a lot, but I honestly didn't. I just want you to know that. For you new fans that have listened to all this stuff tonight. But anyway, Jeff, thank you so much. And Hammond and I, we've had a great driver-crew chief relationship. And that's the success in this sport. Just like Dale and Richard, Hammond and I, we went through a lot of ups and downs. You know, we won the Daytona 500 together with Stevie helping us a little bit along the way. We retired from racing together. We started our Fox journey together. And here he is tonight. And he just whispered in my ear, "Don't kiss me like you did Brian France." And so, and I can't get Mike Joy to come out here because he's afraid I'm going to grab him and start yelling, "Is this the Hall of Fame?" So I left a strong impression on both of them. Now I want to thank, look, this is a red letter night, you have to admit. Bobby Allison. Bobby Allison said I deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. Does anybody in here know how big that is? That's big. And he swore to me that they weren't holding the gun to him or anything. He did it right out of the goodness of his heart. And so thank you, Bobby. You know, Richie Evans, I want to congratulate the Richie Evans family. Great job tonight. Watched Richie win race after race after race at Martinsville. And in my world, it's what I call a wheel man. And Richie Evans was the best wheel man I ever saw. And when he raced at Martinsville, and guys, old guys particularly, is there not our first race car that we ever painted that we didn't have to go get the paint from somewhere or mix up a whole bunch of spare cans of paint, mix them all together and see what the heck we're going to get? And I know somewhere in Rome, New York, I saw these guys, somewhere in Rome, New York, there's a men's shop missing a whole bunch of orange ties. Just like that street department's missing a whole bunch of orange paint. Dale Emmon, and I tell Dale this all the time, and I'm serious. If I got into a little run-in with Richard, all Richard ever really did, he just poked me in the chest with that big old long, looked like E.T.'s finger. And so I knew he'd go away. But Dale, on the other hand, if I had a problem, and Dale remember, I had a little problem with Richard one race at Richmond, I wasn't looking for Richard to apologize. I was looking for Dale to apologize because Dale Emmon would hurt you. And Mr. Wood, Leonard and Glenn and David Pearson, my great hero friend David Pearson, when I came into this sport, not a lot of people warmed up to my style. Can't understand why. Charming, nice, friendly, very conversational, but a lot of guys didn't seem to warm up to that. But David Pearson did, and if I had a problem, if I needed help, I could go to Leonard Wood and David Pearson. If I had a problem in my car, Leonard was there. If I had something I needed to know about driving, David was there, and I always appreciated that very much. And this is hard for you to believe, I know, but when Cale said he was going to cut back on his schedule in 1980, he came to me and told me before he told anyone else. He knew that Junior Junior liked my style. Thank you, Junior. Junior he liked my style until he hired me. And then he thought maybe I needed to work on it a little bit. But Cale has been one of my best friends through the years. He gave me that great tip to go drive for Junior. And I mean, how many of you guys in here have had another driver give you a nickname as great as Jaws? I mean, that's a buddy right there. And you know, this night, these men and the people in this room, they're what inspired me. They are what inspired me to be a race car driver. They are what inspired me to Cale said he climbed a ladder. I feel like I climbed a lot of mountains, and the climbing was rough. But these men in this room inspired me to be successful and to be good, and they gave me great examples of how to do that. And for every one of them, from all the inductees from the prior hall classes, Richard, Bobby, David, all you guys, thank you very much for being patient with me and helping me when I needed it. You know, when the night before it started, and I was talking to Stevie, and I said, boy, honey, I just hope I don't get emotional and break down somewhere along the way and tear up. And she said, DW, when you talk about something you're passionate about, you're going to get a little emotional. Well, I'm passionate about a lot of things. I'm passionate about what I've done. I'm passionate about my career, but I'm most passionate about my family. My mom, sitting right up here on the front row in her wheelchair. Mama, thank you for being here tonight. What an effort it took for her to be here. Mom said to me, I called Mom, I said, Mom, you going to be okay? It's a long evening. You think you can hang in there? And she said, son, I've been with you all the way. I'm not going to miss this for anything in the world. So, Mom, thank you for being here. And I can tell you a quick story about Mom. When I started racing, we started racing go-karts. And, of course, we had a little storage room that we worked on the go-kart in. It wasn't even a garage. And so in order to build the engines for the go-kart, well, we needed a place to work on them. And so it always ended up being in the kitchen, in Mom's kitchen. Daddy would wash the parts in the sink. I know now why that fried chicken always tasted like gasoline, by the way. But we'd wash the parts in the sink, and then we'd take the parts over to the kitchen table. You ever see one of those yellow Formica top kitchen tables back in the 60s? We chipped it one time. And that just about ended my go-kart career, messing up Mom's kitchen table. But, you know, she let me follow my passion. And she was there for me. Her and Dad, they did a lot, and they went to every race. But the other part of my family is my brothers and sisters. 5 kids. Dad drove a Pepsi truck. Mom worked at the IGA, and we didn't have a lot of extra cash. And so it took a lot to keep me in business. It took a lot for me to be able to go race my go-kart and pursue my dream. And my brothers and sisters, Carolyn down here, who's worked for me for 30 years, Bob Wall, who helped me start the race team in '91, my sweet sister Connie, and by the way, Michael and I were the only 2 brothers to have ever won the Daytona 500, and so I appreciate him for that. And then the most important people in my life are right here on the front row. And this has been a big week for DW. Not just tonight. I mean, this is huge for my career, but in my family life, we found out that Fausto and Jessica, my oldest daughter and her husband, are expecting their first child. And so I'll be a grandfather. And if you ever wanted to see DW speechless, my Sarah, who is on a mission trip in the Philippines, as early as Wednesday, we talked to her earlier in the week, and she said, Dad, I wish I could be there. I know it's important to you. It's a big night, and I'm sorry I can't make it. When I checked into the hotel room last night, and I opened the door, my Sarah was there. She flew 25 hours to be here tonight. And she's got to turn around Sunday and fly 25 hours back to the Philippines. So that's sweet. That means a lot to an old dad. Trust me. And then there's the redhead. And if there was a Hall of Fame for drivers' wives, Stevie would be in the first class. We've been married 42 years, and like a lot of drivers and the people in racing, it was tough back in the day. I mean, it was just 1 week to the next. What you won 1 week, you paid enough bills so you could make it to the next week. And I'll drop this in right here, Cale. You said about starting your own team. Well, I started my own team, as you well know, and I was eating those black-eyed peas before I was in the business very long, just like that, like you said. But the funny thing about Stevie was when she came into sport in 1972, there were I know you're going to find this hard to believe, but there could be no women in the pits. You could have no women in the pits. And in the garage, there just was kind of it was men only. And I didn't like that. Stevie didn't like that. So I talked to, I think then the competition director was Bill Gasman, and I said, what have I got to do? And he said, you can have car owners and crew members, and that's it. The next week, Stevie was the car owner, and she was a crew member. Now, to say it went smooth would be an understatement. My very first race in the Daytona 500, we'd only run short tracks all over the country, a lot of those short tracks, 100 lappers, about as long a race we ever run. We get in the Daytona 500, we're going along, and it's not going very well. I'm getting slower and slower, and Jake Elder was there, and Jake couldn't, he said, what's wrong with him anyway? And Stevie said, I think he's hungry. And Jake said, he's hungry? She said, yeah, he's never driven a race this long. I'm pretty sure he's hungry. So Jake kind of blew that off and went on about his business, and Stevie figured she better run the truck and get something and make me a sandwich. So she ran the truck, got some ham and cheese, made a sandwich, run back out to the pit. And when I came in the pit to make my green flag pit stop, guess who came over the wall? Stevie Waltrip handed me a ham and cheese sandwich. Now, can anybody in here top that? Handed me a ham and cheese sandwich. Jake and them are changing tires, and I take this sandwich, I look at her, and about that time the jack dropped, and I knew I had to go, so I just threw the thing out the window. And as I drove away, they said Stevie was standing there shaking her head. She said, I thought he liked ham and cheese. But this is the best one yet. So Jake Elder, who was old school, like Herb Nabb and like Leonard and some of them, he kept saying, we're never going to win a race as long as that woman is in the pit. I said, really? You can have a woman in the pit? I said, all right. Let me put it to you this way, Jake. We get 4.2 miles to the gallon of gas. This is a 2.5 mile track, and it's a 500-mile race. How many miles can we go on a tank of fuel? Go get that woman. You know, Stevie she says this all the time, and not so much anymore, but she used to say she'd been married to two men with the same name. And for you folks that are maybe new to the sport, I hope you feel the same way. I have had two lives, and I've had two careers. When I came onto the scene, I was not a nice guy. I was an antagonist. It just seemed to work for me. Nobody else seemed to. I always thought that a lot of people say they take the path of least resistance. I took the path I couldn't resist. You know why? There ain't nobody on it. And so a lot of times I was, off on my own. But through a lot of hard work, and Richard Petty, he may never remember this, but he put his arm around me one day, and he wasn't even mad at me. And he said, boy, keep going like you are, you're going to have a hard time finding a sponsor. Does any of this sound familiar? Antagonist, hard time to find a sponsor, a little trouble on the track. If it doesn't, it should. And I took that to heart because Richard Petty he gave you good advice. When he told you something, you take it to the bank. And so I worked hard on changing my image. And by golly, in 1989 and 1990, I was able to win the most popular driver of this sport. And no, that's one of the biggest awards in my whole career. A lot of people have been with me on this amazing journey. Junior, I could have never, I wouldn't be standing here tonight. I was just some big mouth driver from Tennessee that Junior calmed me down and taught me how to win a lot of races and how to win championships. And he gave me some good advice too. When I started my own team, somebody asked him about it and he said, yeah, well, he's finally got an owner as smart as the driver. But one of his favorite things to do to me, he inspired me a lot. He called me Cale a lot. When I first started driving for him, he'd come on the radio and he'd say, pit next time by, Cale. I'd say, dadgummit, Junior, my name ain't Cale. 10-4, Cale. Pit next time by. I love driving for Junior Johnson. He taught me a lot. And it was fun to work for him. And of course, went on and did other things. But it's kind of interesting that I rode on that Pepsi-Cola truck with my dad, selling Pepsis and Mountain Dew, and by golly, we had Mountain Dew and Pepsi for a sponsor. I always just thought that was such a cool deal, from a little boy on a Pepsi truck to them sponsoring my race car. And I had Rick Hendrick, and Rick told me, he said, DW, if we get the right people, we'll build the right cars. And Rick was a big people person, and he gave me some good advice. He said, always remember this: you can be multi-rich, but you can't be multi-broke. Think about that. He's not here, so I can tell you that. But David Hill, I tell David Hill all the time, and if you don't know David Hill, I wish we could have a meet and greet tonight and you could meet him. This man is a genius. Not because he hired me. I mean, that was just a stroke of luck, I think. But he gave me a chance for a second career, and it's something I'm equally as passionate about. Working on television keeps me in the sport, and it lets me share my passion with all the great fans that we get to tune in every week on NASCAR on Fox. I got the greatest team. I tell the guys all the time on the NASCAR on Fox team, and most of them are here tonight, and thank all of you for coming. This is the best race team I've ever been on. They do the best job week in and week out, and they like me, and I think it's contagious. Larry, who is a passionate crew chief, Jeff, who is a passionate crew chief. I'm a passionate driver, and I think I think that enthusiasm and the love for this sport is contagious, and it shows every week when we go on television. So thank all my NASCAR on Fox buddies for the great job that y'all do. Now I got a little mafia back here, a little posse, the Nashville posse. John and Ed, Melvin and Gordon. These are people that have been my friends. They flew over for this tonight. Thank y'all for coming. I got to mention Floss, because Floss took good care of Stevie and I, and gave us a place to lay our head down a lot of nights when we didn't have somewhere to go. So thank you, Floss. And Joe Carver, my good buddy from Nashville, taught me a lot about how to do interviews and how to work with the media. And thank you, Joe. And Bill France Jr., one of my biggest honors ever was the night I got the Bill France Award of Excellence. And Bill, in 2000, when he was so sick, came all the way to New York, sitting in his wheelchair right down there to see me accept that award. That was a huge, huge deal for me. We started our careers together in 1972. It was kind of known as the modern era. You know, they always told me, if you're going to dream as big as you possibly can, because you know what? It might just come true. And tonight, I'm living proof of that. I do want to point out one thing real quick. Stevie's sister and her family are all over here. Carol and the kids went to the races with us all the time. I'm glad they're here tonight. I want to mention my grandmother, who took me to races when I was a little boy, 7 years old. I got bit by the bug. G.C. Spencer was her hero. He became my hero. And I told Granny one Sunday, we were standing in Victory Circle with G.C. Spencer. I said, Granny, someday I'm going to do that. And she said, boy, that's impossible. And you know what? I took that word and I broke it down. I'm possible. I'm possible. And I took that with me everywhere I ever went. The picture that's up there is the 1975 race, my first win, and guess who was in the victory circle with me? My granny. My grandmother was there. Jake's got her arm around her. Robert G. Robert's over here. He's on the right. That's Dale Jr.'s grandfather. Stevie up there, and that's my grandmother and grandfather. My mom and dad are back there. And that was on Mother's Day weekend in 1975. And by golly, that's where the dream started. And here's where it ends tonight. 85 was a great year. 82, man, we dominated everything in 82, as Jeff said. 85, we didn't dominate, but we were able to turn the heat up on Bill a little bit, and we were able to win the 1985 championship. That year, we made 206 points after the Southern 500 to win that 85 championship. So when Junior Johnson, when he turned up the wick, like Hammond said, when he said get it done, we all went to work and we got it done. And that was the motivation that I had. One thing when I drove for Junior, I never wanted to disappoint him. I always wanted to do the best I could. In 1987, I went with Rick Hendrick in the Tide Ride, and everybody said, finally, a sponsor that will clean up his act. And by golly, they were right. And on my 17th try, driving car number 17, and the purse was $1.7 million, and I got 17 letters in my name, a handicap 17, so on and so on. I won my 17th, and in my 17th try, I won the Great American Race, the Daytona 500. Western Auto came along, and I started my own team, and not so sure that was a good idea, but kind of hard-headed, had to try it. You know, and Rick Hendrick always told me that if I'd have stayed with him, like Cale said, if he'd have stayed with Junior, if I'd have stayed with Rick Hendrick, he said, DW, you'd have won 100 races and 10 championships. So, based on how he's doing and how I did, I'm inclined to agree with him. I think he's probably right. So it all comes down to this, folks. I've had a marvelous career. My faith's important to me. One of my biggest accomplishments that I never get a chance to talk about is motor racing outreach. Our president is here tonight, Billy Malden. I had a lot of things out of order, and my priorities were one of them. I loved racing. That's all I cared about. I didn't care about anything else, and it bit me. After a while, it got me, and I finally realized that I had my priorities wrong. It was God, family, and racing. And when I got that straight, I became a much better man, and actually ended up being NASCAR's most popular driver. So I've been blessed. I was given a second chance. And in closing, I'll just say this, a couple of things. It's not about me. It's not about what I've done. It's not about wins, statistics, or anything else. Tonight, it's about family. Thank the good Lord that they're all here. It's about all my friends who came from miles away to be here. And it's about all the fans that are back there that have supported me all through the years. And it's about NASCAR and what they've been able to do with this sport. And I'm just glad I was able to be a part of it. Now, I'm probably running a little bit long, but I got to tell you this quick story. Just one more story, I promise. You see this ring right here? In 1982, I won the championship. And Bill France, in 81, I won the championship, and they gave me a ring, and it was a little rinky-dink ring. I didn't think it was very pretty, and it wasn't very big, and I thought, man, that's really not very indicative of how hard you have to work to get this thing. So in 82, Bill France called me up, and he said, if you win the championship again this year, you can pick the ring. And so I picked this ring, and if any champions in here have got their ring on tonight, it started in 1982. And so I've worn it every day since I got it. But tonight, I'm taking it off, and I'm putting on the Hall of Fame ring because this is the greatest thing that has ever happened to me. Thank you very much.
All week long, Darrell Waltrip has been saying it's not about how, but who. Not how you got here, but who helped you along the way. And Stevie was right. It's okay to be emotional when it's something you're passionate about. Let's talk about that passion, especially when you have two daughters who have flown halfway around the world to be with you on your special night.
It really is. Jessica and Fausto were in Brazil, and they came home to be here tonight and delivered that news for us about going to be a granddad. And then Sarah, I thought I almost passed out when I opened the door of the hotel room and Sarah was standing there. It was an unbelievable surprise, and I was so taken back by it because it made me feel good that her being here tonight, she knew how big a deal it was for me.
Well, someone else who knows how big this is.
The thing that I'm most proud about you is when you talked Mom and Dad into that go-kart when you were 12 years old, you didn't dream of standing on this stage. You just wanted to be a race car driver. And you've raced with your heart and passion ever since the first time you got in one. And it's inspired so many people to dream of what you're experiencing tonight. And as your little brother, I just want to tell you how proud I am of you.
Thank you, bro. Thank you.
I know it's special for obviously your entire family, for the family of NASCAR, and it's all because, like you said, I am possible. You said you took the path that you couldn't resist because it was less crowded. Well, something else that is not so crowded is the Hall of Fame, a fraternity of only 15 members. Darrell Waltrip, with his ring, is now one of them.
Coming up, a final salute to the NASCAR Hall of Fame class of 2012. And final words and thoughts on the 2012 NASCAR Hall of Fame induction ceremony. Speed's presentation of the NASCAR Hall of Fame induction ceremony is brought to you by Nationwide Insurance. Call 866-500-5555 or a local agent now.
Well, soon the process will begin anew to choose a fourth class for NASCAR's Hall of Fame. It may be decades before we achieve the firepower and the star power that we have here in the class of 2012. Gathered on stage behind me, the living members of the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Please come visit in uptown Charlotte, North Carolina, because these are our heroes, and this is our Hall of Fame. Thank you. Good evening.